Okay, I hope you hear me well. During the singing, there was some disconnection. So let me know if you don't hear me.
We're hearing you well. Yes, we are. Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaivam Naruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of request, one should first offer our humble obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati tamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiti. So freestyle translation summary of this verse by regularly doing what we're doing right now, attending, spending our time with Srimad Bhagavatam, everything that's miserable for the heart, almost everything becomes removed, and loving devotional service for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is established as an irrevocable fact. Very inspiring and encouraging. So we're going to read from the third canto, chapter 5, verse 21.
You can be
So it's 3:5:21. Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam
Bhavan Bhagavato Necham
Samata Sanugasyaha
Samata Sanugasyaha
Yagyanupadeshaya
Yasya Geno Padeshaya
Madishat Bhagavan Vrajan
Madishad Bhagavan Vrajan
Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam
Bhavan Bhagavato Nicham
Mata Sanugasyaha
Samata Sanugasyaha
Yagyanupadeshaya
Yasya Geno Padeshaya
Madisat Bhagavan Vrajan
Madishad Bhagavan Vrajan
Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam
Bhavan Bhagavato Nicham
Mata Sanugasyaha
Samata Sanugasyaha
Yagyanupadeshaya
Yasya Geno Padeshaya
Madishat Bhagavan Vrajan
Madishad Bhagavan Vrajan Bhavan Bhagavato Nicham
Bhagavato Nityam
Samata Sanugasyaha
Mata Sanugasyaha
Yasya Geno Padeshaya
Yasya Gyanupadeshaya
Madishad Bhagavan Vrajan.
Madishat Bhagavan Vrajan. Would anyone else like to recite the verse? No? Okay. Bhavan,
Bhavan,
your good self.
your good self.
Bhagavata,
Bhagavata,
of the personality of Godhead.
of the personality of Godhead.
Nityam,
Nityam,
eternal.
eternal.
Samata,
Samata,
recognized.
recognized.
Sa Anugasya,
Sa Anugasya,
one of the associates.
one of the associates.
Ha,
Ha,
have been.
have been.
Yasya,
Yasya,
of whom.
of whom.
Jnana,
Jnana,
knowledge.
knowledge.
Upadeshaya,
Upadeshaya,
for instructing.
for instructing.
Ma,
Ma,
unto me.
unto me.
Adishat,
Adishat,
so ordered.
so ordered.
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
the personality of Godhead.
personality of Godhead.
Rajan,
Rajan,
while returning to his abode.
while returning to his abode.
Translation. Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. And the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Yamaraj, the great controller of life after death, decides the living entities' destinies in their next lives. He is surely among the most confidential representatives of the Lord. Such confidential posts are offered to great devotees of the Lord, who are as good as his eternal associates in the spiritual sky. And because Vidura happened to be among them, the Lord, while returning to Vaikuntha, left instructions for Vidura with Maitreya Muni. Generally, the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. Sometimes they come, however, by the order of the Lord, not to hold any administrative post, but to associate with the Lord in person or to propagate the message of God in human society. Such empowered representatives are called Shakti Avesha Avatar, or incarnations invested with transcendental power of attorney. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamada Mayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanjana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Kim, Parampara, Dear Govinda, Malini. I think that's everyone. Or is anyone else with you, Dear Govinda?
No, that's it for now anyway.
So the first thing I wanted to find out when I read the verse is who is speaking to who? And it's a good thing to engage my mind in trying to figure it out. And I went back verses and verses, and I thought, wow, each verse is so beautiful and so much meaning in it, and the storyline is so interesting. And yeah, I was meditating on that. Like, so we hear Srila Prabhupada here speaking about what Vyasadeva wrote down of a conversation between the sages at Naimisharanya and Sutta Goswami, and he's speaking about the conversation between Shukadev Goswami and King Parikshit. And then they mention other conversations, and so it's like a whole like the message goes through many, many different personalities. And I was, during japa this morning, I was just feeling so amazed. Like usually in ordinary everyday life, someone makes a statement to someone and that person tells it to someone, it's already completely changed. And then they tell it on and it's completely changed. And at the end, there's just a totally different message than what the person originally said. And here we have a message going through a whole line of personalities, and it doesn't lose any of the potency. It's like, I mean, I understand that theoretically and also experientially, like the message, what this message does to my consciousness, like how many earthquakes it has created. Yeah, it's very powerful and it's unchanged. And then I was questioning, well, and now I am speaking to you, what all these personalities are speaking, and I connected with appreciation for all the verses that we just recited that support us to also to represent the message, even though our heart or my heart is not pure. My heart, my mind, it's not a pure mirror. And with the support of these mantras and Srila Prabhupada, I pray that what I share is what the message that Krishna has left for us in all these personalities. So we hear Maitreya speaking. This statement is Maitreya speaking to Vidura, and he's saying, Krishna has left a message with me, and I'm going to share it with you. And it's interesting in many ways, because in an earlier verse we hear about Maitreya, and he wasn't a pure devotee of the Lord. He wasn't an eternal associate of the Lord. Yet he was fully qualified and eager to hear from Krishna. And Vidura, he is a pure devotee of the Lord. He is an eternal associate. In his previous life, or his normal position is his Yamaraj, like the death personified, like he's in charge of death and where the souls journey on. And so he's a pure devotee of the Lord. So Maitreya has a message for Vidura. In my logic, Vidura would have a message for Maitreya, but it's the other way around. So Krishna has left a message. And yeah, like in that meditation on these personalities, I discovered that in my consciousness, when I think of elderly people, so we have Maitreya, he's an elderly person, Vidura is an elderly person, Vyasadeva is an elderly, so they're all like in their high age. And like the people I know in that age, usually they're like somehow bitter about life, or they're confused, or they have given up, or they're, yeah, like not my image of elderly people is not all that inspiring. And I understood, wow, but this is a totally different category. These are like elderly people, elderly personalities, and they just symbolize and live and inspire compassion and love, and their interest, they have no other interest than to please Krishna, and that's equal with being interested for the welfare of all and acting for the welfare of all. They carry wisdom, like endless wisdom, how to live life in a way that's fulfilling and on purpose, and yeah, like for the highest consciousness. And that's the heart of Vidura and of Maitreya. It's the heart of Krishna, of Vyasadeva, of Sutta Goswami, Sukadev Goswami. It's the heart of Srila Prabhupada. And yeah, that's how the message of Krishna comes to us. It's said in the purport that Yamaraj is like certainly a most confidential representative of the Lord. And I was thinking about that, like, yeah, to have the duty and the responsibility to decide where a soul goes at the time of death, when the soul leaves the body, the material body, where it will go. It's like a really responsible position. It made me think of, I will bring a few examples from my daily life, which at the moment is a lot about school and teaching. And it's the time of the year when teachers decide in certain classes, certain grades, where the children will go on. Will they go on to a school that is more like focused on academics, or is more like practical? Or so there's like decisions that teachers take that have an influence on the career or the journey the kids take. So this is like a very, very small, compared to Yamaraj's decisions, it seems small, and yet it has a big influence. And so Yamaraj he's what I understand, a pure devotee of Krishna, and he serves under the guidance of Krishna. And I imagine he consults with Krishna in some cases. Okay, what's best for this soul? Where will we take this soul? Where will we guide it according to karma, desires and deserves? And it brought me to Bhagavad Gita, 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita that I want to read, 2 verses where Krishna explains in different places in Bhagavad Gita what happens. He describes the importance of our consciousness at the time of death, at the time of leaving our body. And yeah, there's text 8 from chapter 15, where Krishna says, Shariram yadavapnoti yatchatvyutkramatishvara gritvaitani samyati vayurgandan ivashayat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. So the consciousness at the time of death has an influence, a very strong influence of where we go in our next life. And Srila Prabhupada comments into the text. Here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends on him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him on to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada here stresses actually that, yeah, he's like, we are in control. Like there's a minute independence. We are in control. And in another place, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says it's decided by higher powers, like where we go after death. So it's like, I understand it as a combination, and the higher power is Yamaraj. That's my understanding. So our consciousness where our consciousness is important, not just at the time of death, also in everyday life. And I'm getting more and more understanding how that my surrounding is influencing my consciousness. And yeah, like there's another verse. I will also read this verse from Bhagavad Gita from chapter 8, where it's described how I will read it and then I will comment. It's text 5 from chapter 8. Antakale chamamiva smaran muktva kalivaram yaprayati samatvavam yatinastyatra samsaya. And whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. And Srila Prabhupada comments, in this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental abode of the Supreme Lord. The word smaran, remembering, is important. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. So this is important. So it's not just about, it is about the moment of death and the quitting the body. Yet what we learn here is that it's not just I live my life and then at the time of death I will remember Krishna. No, it says like it's a practice. It's not possible for the impure soul or the impure, like for the soul with an impure heart. And I know that my heart and consciousness and my mind and gets so distracted from Krishna consciousness and self-realization so easily. And if I don't practice that every day, it will not work at the time of death. I'm sure of that. So it's about practicing that. And right now in my life, I'm observing that because I do spend, because it's like the end of term, there's lots of extra meetings about next year and the new children and saying goodbye to the, it's just a lot of extra time I spend at the school. And yesterday evening, I said to Paramatma, my husband, I said, I had an overdose. It was overdose of school. I noticed my mind like getting so absorbed in such unnecessary details of, I will not even share what, just so, and then the mind just catches on to these details and churns them and, oh, I could have done that, I could have said this, or we could do that, and just so absorbed. And I got this email from Dear Govinda asking if I would give class today. And I thought, oh yes, I will have, it's good. This is the opportunity. This is like Srila Prabhupada, Krishna giving me a service through Dear Govinda to get my mind back to what's really important and what's uplifting and inspiring and what's purposeful, to think about Krishna and Srimad Bhagavatam and all the personalities and what they're like and what their message is for us. So it's a constant training and effort, and it's like walking on a razor's edge to at least for me, to participate in the world and to fulfill my duties and to arrange my life in a way that I'm always going to go back to remembering Krishna in some way or other. Yeah, I made many notes, so I'm going to look what else I wanted to speak about. Another thing that stood out for me is that when we read the purport, so sometimes these like the eternal associates of the Lord, usually they don't leave the spiritual sky. They stay there. But sometimes they do come by the order of the Lord, not to hold any administrative post, but to associate with the Lord in person, or to propagate the message of God in human society. Yes, human society. So I was curious about that. It made me think, okay, so yeah, like so Krishna sends his devotees, his associates to carry the message of God to us, who are like wandering, stumbling around in the material world. And so that's I have meditated on that, and that's what Srila Prabhupada is. That's who Lord Jesus Christ is. There's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Rupa Goswami, and also Maitreya and Vidura. And the other part, they come into the material world to associate with the Lord. I thought that's really interesting. So if they're eternal associates and they spend time with Krishna every day, like so it's or with anyone they spend time with, they just speak about Krishna and they're interested in pleasing Krishna. So why would they come to the material world to meet Krishna, to associate with him? So I just have it's a question that came up for me, and I didn't research anything about it. I just thought, well, that's kind of like a few weeks ago, I went to England to associate with Shyama Priya and Michael. So I left my country to spend some time with Shyama Priya. So the eternal associates of the Lord, they sometimes, leave their country to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And another thought that came to me, which is just like a speculation, that they might be really curious about how Krishna appears in the material world, and he appears in different forms. So they, like here in this pastime, Yamaraj came to associate with Krishna in his original form. And we hear in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, many of these eternal associates, they also come and they associate with Krishna in the form of Lord Chaitanya. So I don't have more about that, just something I felt curious about, and my mind got interested to think about that. I also thought about this, the last sentence. Such empowered representatives are called Shakti-avisha avatars, or incarnations invested with transcendental power of attorney. And I was, like, to leave out Lord Jesus Christ is in a class is not possible for me, so I will mention him. Like he's described in the Bible also that he's empowered. He got full authority by God to spread the message. So whatever he said was transcendental and full of potency. And he did mention that, like any word he speaks, like he will pass away. Like I don't have the exact quote, but like his word, his message will live eternally. And so the same goes for anything we hear through these amazing personalities, and also Srila Prabhupada, like he had the full potency, full empowerment to spread the message of Krishna in a way that we can get it. and it's so and like so. I mean, we have all spoken and celebrated and meditated on the out of the world things Srila Prabhupada achieved in the time that he was like actively preaching in the West. And I got this beautiful book from Ladini Shakti, and I turn the page every day, and I will show you today's. So that's today on my, that's the page I'm at today. And that's just like one example. It's Srila Prabhupada engaged in his writing and publishing and his devotees. And the picture before, such a beautiful picture of Srila Prabhupada, where he's translating and dictating. And yeah, this is like one amazing achievement of Srila Prabhupada. And then there's so many other amazing achievements, like all the temples that were established, all the centers around the world. And most of all, like the magic. In one conversation, Srila Prabhupada says, oh yeah, people just want to see magic and like some yogic mystic powers, and no one actually sees the magic in the holy name spreading around the world. And that's what Srila Prabhupada achieved, empowered by Krishna and his spiritual master and the whole line to spread the holy name around the world into every village. And I never thought that's magic. And since I heard Srila Prabhupada say that and meditate on that, I think, yeah, it is magic. It's mystical. And another question that came to me is, so why do we need these personalities? And it is like, I would call it, it's a need, it's a desperate need for me to be in contact with these personalities, to somehow even realize when my consciousness is absorbed in something that's not elevating. When I look at my life and how I arrange my life and how deeply ingrained this habit is, it doesn't even feel like a habit. It feels like a given nature, origin. I don't know how to call it, to search for happiness and fulfillment in matter. So I arrange my living environment. I find a place to work. I get a husband and children and friends, and like all these efforts I make, they all come from a desire to get some satisfaction. And when I'm honest, I'm not getting all that much satisfaction. There is some, but when the satisfaction usually comes when I get some realization or some remembrance of Krishna. But without that, there's so much misery, and I still don't get it. Like there's constant problems and tensions and conflicts, if not with my landlord, living environment. It's the mice in the garden that eat all the vegetables I planted, or it's the other teacher at the school who's like obnoxious and dominant, or it's the it's the children that have, or it's my husband, or like there's always some cause of disturbance from the exact same places where I still hope to get some fulfillment and some satisfaction. And it's so deeply ingrained that, yeah, that I don't see any other way to come out of this, to change that consciousness, other than associating with pure devotees, with eternal associates of the Lord, to get their compassion, their grace, their mercy, and also to have living examples. Oh yeah, like it's not just Maitreya some 1,000 years ago, or Vidura, or Vyasadeva, or no, it's Srila Prabhupada, and we can look at his pictures, we can see his videos, we can hear his voice, or we can read about those who met him in person. We can hear about those who meet Srila Prabhupada in dreams, like all these experiences. It's a need for me and my consciousness and my mind to have tangible examples. Yeah, like this is what compassion looks like. This is what unconditional love looks like. This is what it looks like to act for the welfare of all. And my mind can easily go to, oh yeah, they're eternal associates of the Lord, so it's easy for them. So I can go to a place of desperation. So like, well, what's the point? How can I get there? I'm not an eternal associate. I'm a conditioned soul struggling. And then then what like the bridge that is there for me is to associate with like-minded devotees, and also more experienced devotees. Like I associate here, Dear Govinda and Malini. I get so much inspiration, and anyone else I associate with in this bhakti sangha. I can see, I experience how they deal with life and with other persons and with me, and also I can see and witness their progress. I can see, oh, someone really, like their heart really softened when they started chanting, or they became so radiant and shining. Or I see the process and the progress and the process, and it gives me hope and encouragement that, yes, by giving myself to this chanting of the Maha Mantra, there will be progress, and my consciousness is going to be transformed. My heart is going to be transformed. And yeah, just if we go back to the first canto and these beautiful verses where we just recited 2 mantras at the beginning. There's also there are these like 2 other mantras. It's 1 to 13, where it's explained. It's like these verses. I think they are like for me, I don't think just for me. They're a summary of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, like the essence, starting with 1 to 4 and going up to 1 to 20 or 21, I'm not sure. And 1 to 13, so I'm going to try and recite it because I memorized them not long ago. Ata pumbirvicha shrishta varnashrama vibhagasa sanustitasya dharmasya samsidir haritoshanam. So in that verse, now I'm not sure who is saying it, but the content, Dear Govinda, who is saying that? Sutta Goswami?
Sutta Goswami speaking to the sages.
Sutta Goswami, thank you. So he's saying that like the goal of every endeavor in every area of life and in every stage of life is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And yeah, like how to do that, how to come to that consciousness. And then the next verse 14, which I will also try to recite, says it is possible, and it's about focusing our attention onto one point, onto remembering and remembering and worshiping Krishna. And it's Tasmat Ekena Manasa Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Shreya Puchascha Nityada. They are such beautiful verses, and just reciting them is like an upliftment of the consciousness. And so in that verse, Sita Goswami describes, this to focus like this one, like my intention, my focus usually goes to 20 different things at the same time, and to bring all these lines of attention onto one point, and that is to worship and to constantly worship and remember Krishna. And that brought me back actually to the essence of Lord Jesus Christ's teaching, like the first commandment, to worship God with all our heart and all our soul and all our might and all our it's soul, heart, might, and something else, body, maybe actions. Yeah, just like again, just that's the goal of life. That's the essence of any spiritual practice. It's the essence of Bhakti Yoga. To focus all parts of ourselves, all parts of our consciousness on serving and pleasing and loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
To say in the verse from Jesus, it's actually what you said: all our might, all our strength, all our spirit, and all our heart. We call levavka. Lev is heart. All our heart.
Yes. Yeah. So that's my different seem to be different words to describe the same thing. So the last thing that I didn't get very far with my research, but I will mention what also stood out for me, and maybe it can be part of the discussion. Maybe someone knows more about it. I just thought it's so beautiful and playful that Krishna will leave a message for someone with someone else. And I was thinking it's like treasure hunt. When I was a child, I loved treasure hunts. My grandmother would make treasure hunts for us. So she would write like riddles and put them and place them, around the garden and the house. And when you got one riddle and you solved it, like we knew where to go next. So treasure hunt. And I thought, well, somehow Krishna seems to like treasure hunts too. He leaves treasures in different places, and we get to discover them. And I liked that perspective of looking at my life as a treasure hunt, and to go and search for treasures. Staying with the example of the school, I accepted that job out of necessity mainly. And I had huge resistance, and I still have times of huge resistance. And yet, overall, I can see it really supports my urgency for Krishna consciousness. It supports my realization. It supports me to understand the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. So I see there's many treasures. Krishna has many treasures for me at that school for the time being. I don't know how long, but for the time being, there's many treasures there. And I seem to remember, and I didn't find it anywhere. And I'm going to mention it here or put it out here. I heard somewhere that Lord Chaitanya left a message for someone in a river. And when that person went to the river, to that place, he was overwhelmed with love of God. And I couldn't find it. And I don't know, I thought it was Narottam Das Thakur.
I know where you found it.
Uh-huh.
Because a few years ago you were listening to the Vaishnav Sant recordings, you were telling me. And that's the story of Narottam Das Thakur.
Do you remember it? Could you share it? Because I don't.
Well, I think it was on the river Kaveri. Lord Chaitanya was there and he said, Naha, my Naha, my Naha. And so he was thinking of Narottam Das Thakur. And then he went and bathed in the river and he left. He left the nectar of devotional service in the river. That's according to that book. It's not a book by Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada doesn't describe that. But I know you listen to those Vaishnavas and book, or you read them, I don't know. So that's the story. And then, so Narottam Das Thakur is a disciple of the youngest of the Goswami. So years after that, even so, I think he was born just after Lord Chaitanya left the planet. And so Lord Chaitanya, how it goes, Lord Chaitanya, he left, the nectar of devotion, the nectar of the sweetness of devotion. And when Narottam Das Thakur arrived and he felt an urge to go to that river, and then he received, like, I think it became all white, like milk. Anyway, there is some esoteric part to that pastime, but definitely Lord Chaitanya gave something, left a message, left a treasure hunt for Narottam Das Thakur, became like really a very key Vaishnav, like a key Vaishnav. I'm just reading the Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur's biography, and Narottam Das Thakur writing was like the main source of inspiration for Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, with Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur's spiritual master, and Srila Prabhupada's favorite songs are by Narottam Das Thakur. So he's a very key Vaishnava in our Sampradaya. But I remember when you listen or read, you were speaking about this part. So that's probably how it was left in your mind.
Yeah, I did connect it with the time when I was learning bhajans from you, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And I did some reading about Narottam Das Thakur, and it really touched my heart. And it was also described how Lord Chaitanya, all of a sudden he was calling out Narottam Das Thakur, Narottam Das, and no one really knew who he meant. And it was before Narottam Das Thakur was born, and like sometime after he was born. And so heartbreaking when Narottam Das Thakur finally comes to Vrindavan, and Lord Chaitanya has left, and Rupa Goswami is not there, and Sanatana Goswami is not there. And the Vaishnavas, they welcome him. They're like, they just knew Narottam Das Thakur is going to come. And they were so happy and so overwhelmed with love when Narottam Das Thakur finally arrived. So I'm going to end my class here by reading the verse again. Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam Samata Sanugasyaha Yasya Ganupadeshaya Madhishat Bhagavan Vrajan. Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. Hare Krishna. I hope you have some comments or questions or any inspiration to share.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I do feel inspiration from your class. Thank you. And you have several salient points. One, I appreciated where you went with the age. Yeah. So many of these personalities, of course, in the modern day, Srila Prabhupada, and here Vidura, Maitreya, Vyasadeva. Yeah, they're what we would call like elderly. And so it gives a whole different picture of possibilities about the elderly years. And yeah, it's so compared to your and my material impression, a story some of you have maybe heard me share. I remember, yeah, when I was living in the Arab villages, Osifia mostly was a Druze village, some Arab Christians, and the village of Rama, mostly Arab Christian. And I remember in the village of Rama, this was back late 80s, and I had Prabhupada's books, dressed devotionally, and a young man invited me in, and I could see in the corner of like the main room there was an elderly person dying, in the process of death, but the grandchildren were there, maybe it was great grandchildren, and it was just accepted. Whereas in the society I grew up in, it's like, oh, someone's got, oh, yeah. I go to a retirement home, go to a nursing home, but it was accepted, and I made the connection that there in the Arab villages, it's a more spiritually oriented society than suburban America, and so when the focus is truly wisdom, spirituality, then truly not just as a cliche, then as one ages, they actually they're realized as the most valuable persons of society because they have spiritual wisdom and like that. And to the extent that a community or society is consumerist, materialist, then whatever we might say, it's not polite to say it, but as one gets older, they become more useless. They're not near as much fun. They can't work as hard. They can't enjoy as much. And so, and if the goal is material sense enjoyment, one just becomes more useless. So that was very that made impact on me, and I like where I liked so many parts of your class. So you highlighted this part of the purport, which is very interesting. I'm still thinking about it. Generally, the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. Sometimes they come, however, by the order of the Lord, not to hold any administrative post, but to associate with the Lord in person or to propagate the message of God in human society. So as you pointed out, so they're eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky, so why would they come here to associate with the Lord in person? They're already associating in person. So I like where you went with that. And, so we might not have realization, but my understanding, like there's a different flavor. There's a different flavor to there's infinite different personal flavors, and then or to propagate the message. So then, yeah, you gave the example like you visited England, or we can think of the example of like Prabhupada gives, just like, okay, there's say like the leaders of society, and they're free, and they don't have to go into the prison, but sometimes they choose to go to the prison, like on a special mission from the king or the queen, special mission from the governor, and so maybe a government official or the governor himself or the king or queen, maybe they'll choose to visit the prison, and an ignorant person observing might see like, they're in the prison too. They're trapped there too. No, that's illusion. They can come and go as they please, but sometimes out of mercy, even though they don't need to, they'll go to the prison. Maybe even they'll sit at the cafeteria and eat with the prisoners, and like that. So they don't need to, but out of compassion, sometimes they'll serve the king in that way. Um, Hare Krishna. Those are just a few comments.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate all of them. Yeah, about the elderly people, expanding on that. Yeah, it's so twisted. I have a friend whose father is very sick. His cancer is all over the body, and it's everyone knows, and he knows it's time to leave the body, and yet he's doing everything to live just a few months longer. He's going through all the therapies, and he's going like it's the situation became so painful, like so painful for everyone involved. It's just misery after misery, pain, and like so like bitter. She says her father has become so bitter and resentful, and with his wife, her mother, and towards the children, and still he's investing all the energy to keep this body going, and it's so useless. And it's supported, like it's looked at as, oh, that's compassion. It's compassion to help someone, like keep the of course. Yeah, of course there's times where that's compassion to help someone heal the body, but like in his age, over 90 years old, with his health condition, compassion would mean to support, to give him transcendental knowledge, and to help him understand he's not this body, to support him to say farewell to this lifetime and to his children, and to make peace, and to know like there will be a next life, and just that would be compassion. But that's yeah, like it's even like outrageous to say it would be better for him to leave the body. Yeah. And I liked what you said about different flavors. It makes so much sense. Like the eternal associates, they want to see Krishna, experience him in different forms, and it's a different flavor. And it's like, sometimes I would love to see Noah, how she is at the school. I know she's different. She shows different qualities, or when she's in her dance class, or yeah. So I guess it just makes sense.
Hare Krishna. I saw that Bhaktin Kim had her hand up.
Kim?
Hi, thank you for class. I liked early on you made a point about how as a teacher, and I think maybe you were focusing on in ancient Vedic society, would watch the child and see where it needed to go, hopefully to prosper best spiritually, or prosper best, I would think mainly spiritually. And then you brought that to Krishna and Yamaraj, and how they maybe see the soul and develop the journey for that soul on the same way that you were saying a teacher may have done that for the child, for them to go to the best place for their development. I like the way you pulled those two thoughts together. It just sounded so caring and loving. I just had appreciation for that. I wanted to say thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim, for your comment. I was actually referring to teachers today, and it's usually not, the intention is not, or the focus is not, it's not even in the consciousness, the spiritual development. So it's kind of again, like a twisted example.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were going back to the Vedic, way they used to pick, or if you were speaking about today. But yeah, but pulling that together, Krishna and Yamaraj may do that same thing for the soul is just a comforting thought,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, ideally, there are like endeavors in that direction. Here, I think I can speak for Switzerland, also in the teaching field, to bring in, to bring in this the broader perspective and to support the child to discover what are their unique qualities. There's some movement going back there. There is some little hope. Any other comments or questions or inspirations? Okay. Well, thank you for the association. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Anandini.